why.
Oh,
He's
okay.
coming.
Okay, two quick stories, since Tyler mentioned them, about the little things that my dad would do. I'm going to tell one about my sister. So, we were spoiled beyond belief as kids. Literally spoiled beyond belief. So, my sister hated getting up in the morning. Hated it. Was not a morning person. And so, every day, until she graduated high school, my dad would go upstairs, he would get her out of bed, and he would pick her up, even when she was 18 years old, walk her over to the shower, set her on the little toilet, seat closed obviously, turn on the shower for her so that she would be able to wake up with the shower already on. In the meantime, while she was in the shower, he would go in her bedroom and turn on her favorite music, smooth jazz, so that when she got out, she could be, rocking to smooth jazz. Now, while she was in the shower, he would be downstairs below in the kitchen giving me a spelling test, because I was the spelling test person, and he would listen for the shower to be turned off so that he could pour her milk into her Cinnamon Toast Crunch at the exact moment so that when she came downstairs to eat it, that it wouldn't be too soggy. That's the kind of dad I had. When I was in high school, I remember my dad bought me a Mustang. It was the coolest car. Every Tuesday, when CDs came out before you could download them on iTunes, my dad, if he knew a CD was coming out that I really, really wanted, he would go out to the store, he would buy the CD, and when I would get in my car after high school, I would turn it on, and Ricky Martin would already be singing, or NSYNC, or Backstreet Boys, or whatever stupid boy band I was into at that time. My dad wanted me to have that joy when I got out of school. That's just the kind of person that he was. And I feel honored to have those sort of memories. So our last speaker is going to be my mom. And gosh, so many things. So they met back in the 80s, and they didn't date very long. In fact, they hardly dated at all. And they'd been dating just for a few months. Now, they were next door neighbors, and so she went on a trip, and she came home. She actually went to Kansas. She went home for the weekend for 3 days. And when she got home, they were sitting on her couch in her little condo, and she was sitting on his lap, and he said, "Gosh, I missed you." And she said, "I know, so did I." Now, as she had been in Kansas visiting her family, she had told them, "This is the guy I'm going to marry. I know I've only known him a few months, but this is the guy I'm going to marry." And so as they were sitting there on each other's laps talking, I missed you too," he said, "Let's get married." And she said, "Okay." No ring, no one knee, none of that. Just spur of the moment, let's get married. And she said yes. And I love that my dad was so spontaneous in that moment, because I don't think of him as spontaneous at all, but I love having that memory of him being spontaneous and doing that. The next great question that my mom asked him a few hours later was, "How much money did you make today?" And he said, $32. And my mom thought, uh-oh. Another great story about my dad. So this ponytail, world-renowned ponytail. My mom got the bright idea that she just wanted a man with a ponytail. So as you can see, us Stevens, we're not great hair people. We do the best we can with what we have to work with, but we don't have great locks of love. And so it took him about 2 years to grow this little 2-inch stubby ponytail. And we were at the 6th grade country Christmas craft fair at Islands Elementary, and I think my mom and my sister had a little craft booth because we're crafters. And in walked my dad, no ponytail. And my mom burst into tears in front of the entire elementary school and their parents, because my dad had cut off his 2-inch little nub ponytail, and ever since then he never cut it. So I'm sure that my mom is going to have some awesome things to say.
Wayne and I were first engaged 34 years ago, my family said it would never work. He was old. He was 7 years older than I was, and that was huge. He was divorced, oh my, and the worst of all, he was from Chicago. It'll never work. And so we decided, being good Lutherans, that we would go to premarital counseling. And they had us take this test. And the results of the test came back, and it was awesome. Like, we were totally compatible, except when it came to friendships. And we scored an 85, and everything else, like, we were rocking 100s, but on friendships, it was 85. And what it was I'm the life of the party. I'm like out there, I'm working the room, I'm doing it. And Wayne was quiet and reserved and just sort of over here. And, you know, the truth is, most of the people here are my friends and Leah's friends and Tyler's. And Wayne was much more reserved. But he had this knack of, we'd go to a party and I'd be working the room. And we'd come home and he'd say, well, did you know so-and-so's getting married, and so-and-so had a baby, and so-and-so this, and so, like, how do you know all this? And he said, well, I listened. Oh, what a concept. What was interesting was that he had the ability to read people, and he was constantly spot on. And that's kind of annoying. Because I would think somebody was wonderful and he'd say, you know, use a little caution there. Or I would think somebody was terrible and he'd say, no, they're doing the best they can, it's fine. And so that was a constant through our entire marriage. And you know, I want to thank the people that are here, my Psi friends, PSI, you guys rock. And you know, as this was coming together, I mean, I didn't even think of things, and somebody would be calling and saying, I got this, I'll do this. Last minute, first minute, you know, whatever we need. It's an amazing community. Mi amigos de Cepa. So dear to my heart. And, you know, when I called Oscar, because I was like, who's going to pull this together? And I knew Oscar could do it and would do it for me, and he just has been an amazing support, and all of you guys, like, gave me so much strength through all of this. Our neighbors, we bought this house sight unseen off the internet, and Wayne looked at Google Maps and he saw that there weren't any cars parked on the street. Clearly they weren't having a service, the picture wasn't taken tonight. And he said, yes, I want to live there. That looks like a nice, clean neighborhood. Leah and Tyler's friends, all of you guys, Jenna, I mean, Sydney, Christy, all you guys, we love so much about you. In the last 10 days, 11 days, our phones have been ringing off the hook, and Facebook messages and text messages, and, you know, just inundated. And there was one message that just really struck me. And Karen, that came from you. And she said, Joe and I are honored to attend and to toast a life well lived. And that really is the essence, and you just hit it in so few words, and I just kept reading that. To toast a life well lived, and that's what Wayne had. So I want to tell you a couple things about him, since you probably don't know him as well. He was info central, and there was a big Psi meeting one night, and he's sitting off in the corner because he was never quite sure about my Psi friends. He thought you guys were a little woo-woo. And we got home, and he said, I have this number. Saknite, are you here? I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know who's here, but he said, I met this lady, and you're going to really like her, and you should call her. And I'm like, really, why? He goes, I don't know, you're just going to love her, call her. And she ended up being the person that introduced me to SEPA and all of my SEPA friends, and it was just amazing. And I would have never, ever realized she was even in the room, but Wayne was just so looking out all the time for me. His number one goal in life was to make me happy, and I might be kind of picky about color, and so I decided that I needed a red Liberty, not a burgundy Liberty, not a two-tone Liberty. I need a fire engine red Liberty. And Wayne was in the car business, so how hard could that be? Very hard. They made very few red Liberties. And so he finally found one for me in Houston. And he hopped on a plane and bought it and drove it home because I wanted red. He almost never told any of us no. Everything was always yes. And so last summer, when we knew he was sick, and we went to Flagstaff. We have some family friends that gave us their house, and they have this thing called Pets in the Pines, and it's where all the people with dogs that are in hot places take their dogs to Flagstaff, and they try to pawn these dogs off on people in the park, right? So I went online and I found this dog and I'm like, oh, this is the cutest dog ever. Oh, I want this dog. So Kara and I go to Pets in the Pines. We're like first in line because, there's going to be a big line for these dogs. And we see this dog, and he was nothing like the picture. I mean, the picture had been photoshopped big. But he was really sweet, and so I called Wayne, and I'm like, honey, I really want this dog. And he said, no, wait, this is not a good time to get a dog. And so I wanted the dog. Kara's like, Mom, Dad said no. We need to go home. And so we get home, and I walk in, and he looks at me and goes, where's the damn dog? Well, you told me not to get the dog. And he goes, well, you don't ever listen. Let's go back and get the dog. So I'm like, no, you're going to go, and we're going to get the dog together. And so we went and got the dog, and oh my gosh, this dog never left his side. This dog went to the hotel hospice repeatedly, blood transfusions, anything that was going on with Wayne, this dog was right there. So he never told us no. When we were moving to Mazatlan, I found a house that I really wanted to live in, and so I contacted the owner, and the owner said, no, I'm not going to rent to you. Your husband's not here. Okay, this is weird. So I'm, irritated, so off I go, and I'm going to find a better house. I kept looking, and 6 months later, hadn't found a house, and we were sitting in Phoenix, and I said, I just want that little house. And Wayne's like, well, I'll just get it for you. I'm like, no, it's been 6 months, they've rented it, and he's like, give me the number. And so he called this guy up, and I don't know what happened, but 15 minutes later, he was making a deposit into this guy's account, and I had the house, because that's what I wanted. He was also really good about choosing both. When the kids were little, we would go to Mazatlan for Christmas or for New Year's because he had to work to pay for all this. And one summer we were making our reservations, and we were all out in the pool, and we were like, I wish we could go for both. And Kara was like, well, Daddy, you could just fly home and work for a few days and then come back. So he did. And he loved it. He was also extremely trusting when we bought this house, sight unseen. Yeah, and it was a disaster anyway. And then we pulled in and he saw it, and it was like, oh, what did you do? Like, it's okay, I can fix it, and we did, and he loved living here. Wayne was lazy, dirty, unorganized, and habitually late. Said no one ever. When he got up in the morning, he made his side of the bed. It was really irritating. Like, I would be laying there and he would be smoothing the covers, and yeah. He was a clean freak. In addition to not putting gas in the car, I also didn't do laundry, because the first time I did laundry, he told me I didn't do it right. And I said, okay. And so he always did the laundry. When we moved into this house, we got an upper-lower dryer, and he was really excited. And okay, whatever. So we went to Phoenix, and I was here by myself, and eventually I must have run out of something, and so I had to do the laundry. And so I get the laundry, and I figured out there's all these knobs and whatnot, and then I go to do the dryer, and the darn thing, it will not turn on. Like, it will not turn on, and I'm just pushing, and so finally I called him, and I'm like, honey, I think it's broke. Like, it's not working. There's something wrong. And he said, well, did you close the door? Like, who knew? Like, show of hands, like, who knew? You have to close. I didn't know that. He also had an interesting experience when we were moving to Mazatlan. We took 2 cars, everything we owned. Well, you know, Tyler brought a lot of things we owned later, but we filled up our 2 cars and we went. And so Jeff and Wayne were in the Durango, and I was in the little red Liberty. And we spent a night in Navajoa, and the next morning we got up and it was very foggy and, you know, hard to see. And so I took off, and I might have gone kind of quickly. And Wayne was behind me. Well, all of a sudden I look in the rearview mirror and no Wayne. So I pull off to the side. I'm a few blocks away, and I'm waiting and waiting. And then I look in the rearview mirror and I see Jeffrey running. And I'm like, you know, what's going on? And so I rolled down the window, and Jeff's like, you got to come back. Dad hit the wall. He's bleeding. There's blood everywhere. So I go back, and sure enough, Wayne had hit this little 1-foot wall and then hit his nose on the steering wheel. And he did have somewhat larger nose than some people. And so, I mean, it was like a big gash. And I, being the medical professional that I am, determined that he needed stitches. However, it was a Sunday in Navajoa. So I packed him up, and I put Jeff on the watch, and I went off in search of a doctor. And I soon found one, and I said, my husband needs stitches. Can you do this on a Sunday? And he said, yes, and we agreed on a price and blah, blah, blah. So I went home, I got Wayne, I took him back, and he laid on the little table, and the guy stitched him up. And I paid, and we left, and we walked out, and he said, you know, I've never been in a doctor's office that had those things at the end of the table for your feet. For those of you that don't get it, I took him to a gynecologist. That's all I could find on a Sunday. Wayne loved the rules, and he liked following rules. He also sometimes liked breaking the rules. And so when he was diagnosed, they gave him a pretty short period of time, and we actually went to a Mexican doctor, and we said, well, what about travel? And he said, oh, no. The only travel he should be doing is from the bed to the bathroom, 3 weeks later, we were on the beach in Ixtapa because Wayne said no. And during the last year, we went to Ixtapa. We went to Puerto Vallarta twice. And right before Christmas, we discovered this wonderful thing called hospice. And Mary, put your hand in the air, because if anybody ever runs into this situation called hospice, because they fix things. And I thought hospice was for dying, but hospice is actually for living. And so you tell them what you want, and they figure out how to make it happen. And so he really wanted to go back to Mazatlan. And so we went into hospice, and they did all these things and pumped him up, and we were able to go to Mazatlan we were there on Christmas Eve. We were in Puerto Vallarta on Christmas Day. I mean, it was just an amazing thing. Through this all, you know, my kids have been absolutely fabulous, and my friends and my neighbors would come over and watch Wayne, and you know, clean my house, and just the support has been fabulous. Leah is most like Wayne, and somehow during the year that he was sick, laundry soap just multiplied in my house. Liquid dishwashing, groceries would appear, you know, just amazing. And Jeff made 2 emergency trips back from Quebec, and you know, really did everything for his dad in the most amazing and special way up until the very last second. Along with that, Camille gave him up for months at a time to be with us, and we appreciate her so much. Tyler just has stepped in and taken care, and I think that Wayne knew it was okay, because Tyler and Jeff would make sure it was okay. We always knew that Wayne would wait for Kara to be here, and she was coming about every 10 days, and every time she'd come, we'd say, well, is this going to be the time? And so the last time that she came, he hadn't really talked for a couple of days, and she came in, and she said, I love you, Daddy. And he said, I love you. And that was the last words he ever spoke. and that was who he was. Wayne and I had a song, and you're going to hear it later, but I just want to read part of it. If I could start my life anew, the first thing that I would do, I'd carefully consider every choice, and then of all the boys in the world, I'd choose Wayne again. Si podría empezar de nuevo mi vida, la primera cosa que hacía, consideraría con mucho cuidado cada opción y después de todos los chicos en el mundo, escogería otra vez a Wayne. Gracias.
The next part of our service was something that my dad would really appreciate. In traditional services, as you've seen, this is very non-traditional. You have pallbearers, and so we don't have pallbearers. We have beer bearers. These people mean so much to us, and that's Tyler, Ben, Bear, and my brother, and Sydney and Christy are going to help too. Pass out a beer. It's a Corona, one of my dad's favorites. In a second, once everyone has their drinks, my brother's going to come up. If you have, we have water as well if you'd like some water. My brother's going to come up and give a toast to my dad. Sorry.